Welcome to Advertising in America, the podcast where we meet entrepreneurs where they're at in their marketing and bust through their bottlenecks, breakpoints, and blind spots. Hosted by Wizards Ryan Shute and the Royal Torbay twins, where we put the fun in marketing fundamentals. Are you ready to dominate your marketplace? Are you ready for outrageous advertising? Do you want to become a household name? Brought to you by Wizard of Ads for Services. Visit us at wizardofads.services to book your free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today.
On today's episode of Advertising in America, we're talking shotguns and sniper rifles. Is mass media a farce? Maybe. Should we be zeroing in on the perfect client avatar? Or is there another way to get the right people to do what we hope them to do? Buy all our stuff and suffer amnesia of our competition. Here's Spray and Pray Torbay. What do you have to say about targeting?
It's important to talk to the right people. Best practices says, first reach the right people. I remember when I changed my relationship status on Facebook after my divorce. The next day, I started getting targeted ads. 38 and single, the headline read. That's startling. Why, yes, I am. Why do you ask? Did I do a bunch of stuff that newly divorced dudes tend to do? You bet I did. Got a membership at the gym, bought a new car, upgraded my barber. I was in a demographic shift and there was stuff to sell me. Social is great at targeting. They know exactly how old I am. They know I'm married. Again, they know I have children now. They know what I do for a living. And if their algorithms are any good, they can probably figure out how much money I make and what kind of airplane I fly. It's a Cessna 177 Cardinal. If they didn't know before, they do now, probably because they're listening on my phone right now, the bastards. Knowing about your target audience is a good thing, but it's easy to get bogged down in targeting. Are you really trying to appeal to a very narrow group? If you're selling radios to pilots, yes, you are. If you're selling tires to car owners, no, you're not. Targeting a narrow audience is not an opportunity, it's a curse. The airplane radio company has no choice, but you may have other options. Celebrate that. Remember what my colleague Steven Semple, the direct response expert, says. By definition, it's always more expensive to target. Who buys tires? Everyone, eventually. That means he can advertise on radio and television for pennies on the dollar compared to a targeted campaign. If there's any way your consumer could be considered everyone eventually, you get to choose the lower cost option for less money. Everyone includes more people. More people equals more opportunities to sell. That's how companies grow.
Thank you, Captain Torbay. Why did you go back to your old barber? I'm curious. Is your brother Chris the co-pilot when you two are flying together because he refuses to buy a plane? Or is it something else? Assistant Captain Torbay, what do you have to say about targeting?
Most people don't need to concern themselves with targeting because most people misunderstand what targeting is. Make no mistake, if you sell 16-channel mixing boards to recording studios, yes, you should target audio engineers. Don't advertise on the Super Bowl, it's a waste of your money. But that kind of narrow target is actually rare. Most brands and most companies have a pretty broad appeal. If you sell furnaces, you target people who need heat, which is everyone with a house. If you're selling beer or soft drinks, you're targeting everyone who is thirsty. If you sell cars, you're targeting drivers. Where people are misled in targeting is when the digital companies tell you, hey, you can target only people whose furnace broke down today, zero wastage. It doesn't work. Sure, that's what pay-per-click does. You pay $200 to be top of the list under furnace repair near me, and there you'll be. And the homeowner who has no idea how to choose from a list of the top 10 will choose you because you haven't built a brand with the masses. Apple doesn't target people who decided to replace their phone today. They make people desire their products so that when they decide to upgrade their phone, they go for an iPhone. And the free-thinking, creative, cool trendsetter target that Apple creates to distinguish themselves from the squares who use PCs and carry Android phones, that's all of us. It turns out their artsy and designy niche product, cell phone, is preferred by half the people on the planet. They don't even shy away from being esoteric, and everyone still goes for it. The masses behave like the masses, and the more you think your customer is unique, the fewer people you have left to talk to. Throw a big net and haul in a boatload full of fish.
Thank you, Captain Chris. We have spent our entire $20 word budget on the word esoteric, a word meaning a word that is understood by a small number of people. The irony. After the break, we're going to be throwing axes and paying taxes. Stay tuned for a riveting conclusion of advertising in America. Hey listeners, Wizard Ryan Chute here. Want a personalized strategy to instantly 4x the effectiveness of your marketing dollars? Schedule a free call with me at wizardofads.services. We'll chat about your goals and how you can quickly dominate your marketplace. I have limited availability though, so don't delay. Well, I guess you could delay it a bit, but not too much. That'd be like an over delay. So maybe just skip the delay part entirely and book your call just as soon as you're ready to start making money. You certainly don't want to delay that, right? And now, pitter patter. Fun fact, guys, fun fact, nobody has caught more fish with a line than a net. See, we're out here teaching people to fish. Ryan Deiss, founder of digitalmarketer.com, has spent countless of millions of dollars testing impression-based campaigns against conversion-based campaigns on Meta recently. His only targeting? The trade area of the company. This has resulted in significant brand impressions and a measurable lift in top-line revenue at the fraction of the cost of pay-per-click. That's pretty impressive. So now what we're talking about is getting social media acting more like a mass media. And that's pretty impressive, as we start to shift here and we start to figure out what it is that we're going to do to target or not target. Strategies are changing, including on the socials.
I think one of the reasons why people have gotten so focused on targeting, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, is because it's simply possible. The truth is when your only choices were television, radio, billboards, newspapers, you couldn't target. Everybody did all of those things, and so there was no way to target. And as soon as somebody said, "Yeah, we can find people who are 5'7" and make this much money," then suddenly it became, well, then therefore you kind of have to do that because you can. And I think we're finding now that there's a tremendous downside to that. Anytime you target, anytime you make your broadcast narrower, you are by definition talking to fewer people. Why is that good for your brand?
Well, it sort of depends. I mean, in days of yore on television, you could target a little bit. If you ran your ad on the Golden Girls, you would get more of seniors and you get whatever. If you ran it on MTV, you could get young kids and whatever. So there was a degree of targeting, but it was still large groups, I guess, to your point. And then this whole idea of, you can target people whose furnace broke today, or you can, this very specific person. That's where it's sort of getting out of hand, which is why are you getting narrower and narrower, assuming that is the only person who's going to buy your product. The number of people who are in your potential scope is actually much broader than you think in a lot of cases. Or, considering we talk about building a long-term brand, it becomes the household name. That takes a number of years, and within that number of years, maybe your target floats into that thing. So if you've spent that entire time talking to a very narrow group, then when other people float into that narrow group, you haven't been talking to them all the way along.
Well, and I think about targeting in the sense of I don't want to spend as much money is what the business owner is thinking. And that's a completely reasonable thing to think about as a business owner. I only have X amount of dollars. I need to make them as potent and concentrated as possible on the people that count.
Right.
But that's when you're talking about table stakes.
Right.
Right. When you're talking about table stakes and you don't stand out in market and you don't do anything distinctive and you don't really matter to anyone, or God forbid, you don't even advertise at all and you're just meeting them for the first time at Casino Google.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely going to need to target as best you can through keywords, through demographics, through whatever, just so that you have this ability to spend as little amount of money as possible. But who are you leaving out when you do that? It's monstrous. It truly is.
I think most of the trend towards targeting comes from fear. I think it's fear of the wrong people. Spending my hard-earned money and reaching a person who is not
the message is just going to bounce off them because of the wrong guy.
They're not in a position to purchase my product and service. And that fear of what the advertising industry calls wastage. This is you've reached a person who's not going to buy. That fear has now caused us to reject huge amounts of demographics because we want to be so specific because, well, this person buys and this person buys and this person buys. So I want to make sure that every single dollar I spend is a person who might potentially buy. But what they've forgotten is that the fear of wastage is going to turn this into a ridiculously expensive thing to do if you're only talking to a very, very narrow group of people.
Well, and also, I think you got to remember how fluid targets are. And I got a couple of examples. If you sell boats, wouldn't it be great if you could just target that guy in March when he's finally decided, you know what, this summer I need to have a boat. So let me start looking around for boat stores. I'm going to go out this March. And that seems like, boy, if you could just target people who've decided this spring is the spring, man, they've been thinking about it, but this spring is the spring. Well, the fact is, if you've been marketing to people who are thinking about buying a boat, they've been fishing for years, they've been water skiing for years, they've had a cottage for years, whatever it is, they've been thinking about it for years. This may be the spring that they actually go and do it. But if you've been advertising to them for years when supposedly they're not the target yet, they now have a brand of preference that's already in their heads. If you try to get them at the last moment while someone else has been advertising to them for years, then you're going to be playing catch up with that. The other thing that's interesting is, everybody likes to quote David Foote, who wrote Boom, Bust, and Echo, and talking about how, the demographics change and how targets change. What's interesting, I think, about what he said is the aspects of target audiences that actually stay the same. I mean, he pointed out that, hey, when, the boomers, boy, when they all graduated from college, they all went out and bought, small little cars. And look, Honda Civics are selling like crazy. It's like, guess what? Everybody who just graduated college is looking for a cheap little runabout that they could do. And then when they have kids and they have a house or whatever, they buy a bigger car, they buy a nicer car because they get more senior. Those things about those demographics have always been there.
Yeah.
If everyone knows about them, then the 12-year-old who knows about Honda Civics when he gets to be that age is going to go and buy that car. So establishing your brand, again, if you're playing the long game, if you're being the household name, if you're being the brand that people have in mind before the triggering event that makes you want to go and do it, that wastage is not wastage.
Well, I think it's really important to put a finer point on this in so much as we're not saying go and run radio ad campaigns when you don't service the whole city, for example, as a home service company. We're not saying talk to everyone and disappoint the majority of people that you don't service. That's a bad marketing strategy and well wasted. But we are saying talk to as many people as you can get to and consistently talk to at a regular pace. That might mean that you're targeting your area, but we're not targeting 35-year-old women in your area who are homeowners and like the color red and have a dog, right? At the end of the day, we have to understand that everyone in our target area, right or wrong person, i.e. a renter, a homeowner, a person who is going to buy our thing now or later or not, those are all people as influencers. And we see everyone is an influencer. If you're 18 years or older, we can start working that line for you, that messaging for you, so that you start getting embedded in the long game, as you said, Chris, to have them thinking about you well before they ever need your thing, and having that know, like, and trust impression already imprinted on them for when they actually need your thing. So that's a hugely important thing. Defining things and agreeing to a set of terms is probably one of the most challenging things that we have in communication. It's the thing that gets in our way of just agreeing what targeting is, and then how do we target appropriately for strategy, but how do we target appropriately or stop targeting appropriately to reach the masses. Now, that being said, the best ads are about a customer and their life, right? The worst ads are about your business and the table stakes that you bring to the table that are minimum standards today. One of the things that Roy has always said to us is that you're never going to go bankrupt talking to the wrong people with the right message. So what is it that we have to do, or what do we do that stands us 600 feet above the competition without actually obsessing about the ultra targeting that we're talking about?
I think you brought up a really interesting point. I've never thought of it this way until you just said it now, that I think it has to do with your mindset as a business owner and mindset as a marketer of the short-term versus long-term philosophy that you have. If you're targeting, if you're narrowcasting, if you start talking to a smaller group of people, by definition, that is a short-term thought. As soon as you go from short-term thinking to long-term thinking, you start adding more people to your demographic target. I remember I had a client, this years ago, a chain of tire retailers, and I had written them a jingle, and they had a tagline, "Get it at MacArthur Tire," and I decided to walk around the community where this campaign had existed, and I got people to say their their tagline. It's a crazy idea. So I did this. I got all sorts of people in town, including a group of high school students who sang the whole song. And I played this back to the client and said, isn't this cool? Here's this group of like 5 teenage girls who just sang your song. Isn't that brilliant? And the business owner was like, 16-year-old girls don't buy tires. Why are you so proud of yourself that this group of the wrong people is so excited about this? And I said, well, I'm no expert on teenage girls, but one thing I do know is that they grow up.
Yeah.
And eventually they start driving, and eventually they buy their own car. And when they buy their own car, they are now responsible for purchasing the tires. These people have a preferred brand at 16. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Where do you think they're going to be buying their tires in 10 years?
Right.
And he's like, well, 10 years. It's like, well, fuck off. You're supposed to be in, are you in this for the long, that's my point is that's the long game. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking long game, by definition, more people fall into your trap. And if you're getting bogged down in targeting, I'm saying to you, why are you only worried about today?
Right. When we think about the bell curve of standard deviations, there's 7% of the market that's at any given time in any given trade area looking for a thing today. Of that 7%, there's a substantial percent, somewhere between 40 and 60%, depending on market, depending on industry, that is already got a decided provider. They've got a guy, right?
Yeah.
Then there's 16% of that population that couldn't finance a hot dog, right? So there's no way they're getting anything that you have to sell. Doesn't matter how much they like it. Then there's the ultra invested in you, and they're going to buy from you regardless. And then there's the fundamentally the undecided, which leaves us with 1 to 3% at best of that 7% that could possibly buy from you. And then if the very first place you meet them is Google at the roulette table, all you're doing is hoping that they pick you from this one of many things that ball drops onto your 39 and you get the payout. Well, and you had to pay for that payout, by the way. So at the end of the day, what do we actually have here? This is a literal hope strategy in its purest sense. But at the end of the day, what are we trying to actually achieve here? Right? What are we actually trying to get done with the strategy that we put in place, regardless of it is? If it's targeting, we're going to have less people. We're going to have less chances. You're putting your number on less numbers on the roulette table, right? And you have less of a chance of winning.
Well, and broadening your target is the only way you can actually grow that market. Like there's a thing to be said for, I only want to talk to the people who are currently in my quote unquote target. Mm-hmm. Then you're all trying to divide up that small piece of the pie. How do you make that piece of the pie bigger so that you can, A, you're going to have a bigger percentage of it, but then B, it's a bigger piece of pie.
Right.
You do that by perhaps appealing to more people than you thought were in your target market originally. I always talk about a story when I was a kid. I used to belong to the Columbia Record and Tape Club, right? Back in the day, you used to join for a penny, you'd get 7 CDs and they'd send them to you, and then you had to buy a few more over
you still owe
the time being, and they're probably still looking for me. My name is Dave Smith. But the interesting thing that would happen is the way it worked is they would send you the monthly selection, and if you didn't want it, you had to send it back. And so then if you forgot to fill out the card and send it back, then you were stuck with something. Well, that's how I got to know some of my favorite artists today, is that I didn't want the monthly suggestion, but I forgot to say no, and so I ended up with the stupid thing. And so I was not in the target market of that band until somebody sent me their record, and I played it because I got stuck with it, and it turns out I love these guys. And so the advantage of targeting people who are not currently in your target audience, that's how you get more people in your target audience. That's how people find out about it. You know what? I've heard about this such and such product. Apparently, if you do this, I should look into that. Mm-hmm. You went from not being in the target to being in the target. And the only way to do that is to appeal to a broader range than just those people.
Are you the city's best kept secret, or do people actually know who you are? In 99% of the cases that we interface with, you think that people know you, and basically no one does, right?
Remember that saying, only half your marketing is working, you just don't know which half? Let's help you with that. Book a free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today at wizardofads.services. Yes, that's a URL, wizardofads.services. Now let's get back to the show.
Interesting that you say that, though. Fun fact, science has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that an 18-year-old person will be exactly 28 years old in 10 years. Prime buying for the buying grown-up shit.
But on the topic of targeting the person who's ready to buy today, and that's when business owners get excited. There's a person ready to buy today. Don't you want to talk to that person?
Yeah.
You bet. In a sense, targeting the person who's ready to buy today was the entire strategy of the Yellow Pages, right? That the only thing that they were good at is if someone's ready to pick up a phone book, there was a thing called the phone book, ready to pick up the phone book and make a call, that's someone who's ready to buy today. And they built an empire on that entire idea. As we've discussed before, that only applied, they would sell that by saying, the idea is these are all the consumers who are ready to buy. We're going to put them in the Yellow Pages and they're going to see your ad. And if you buy the biggest ad, you're going to have a better chance of doing it. What they didn't mention is that there are huge, entirely massive amounts of categories where people will not do that, and that shit still applies today. If we wanted to go and get a fast food burger right now, what would we do? Would we go to Google and say burgers near me, or we go to freaking Mickey D's like everybody else? And if you go to the Yellow Pages, there was never a big ad for them. And if you go to Google and say burgers near me, McDonald's won't show up. Well, those people are making a lot of burgers today and making a lot of dough doing it. So the goal is to be like McDonald's, have people already have your business in their head so that they're not Googling burgers near me. They're saying, where's the nearest Ryan's Burgers? That's what I want.
Well, and that's it. It brings up an interesting topic as well, which is people are different targets at different times. I love a craft hamburger, made by a one-off, chef style guy, as much as the next guy. I also like the Big Mac, and I also like the Wendy's burger, and I also like the Whopper. And I'm in a different mood at different times. So by all means, talk to those. If you're the handmade chef burger, then by all means promote that in your advertising. And then the day I'm feeling like that kind of burger, I will totally think of you first. But that doesn't mean I'm not also in the other demographic and will respond to their targeting. So in terms of making sure that the message is heard by all people, be heard by all people, and you'll get me on the day that I slot into one of those categories.
Yeah. Now, as the cost of whatever it is that you sell raises up, and the longer the purchase cycle gets, the greater the distance of those neurotransmitters are going to die off like Texas grass if we're not reminding them that you're still the most relevant choice at that time. As the price tag goes up, the propensity towards transactional becomes much, much higher. Nobody wants to take their buddies out to the backyard to show them the new air conditioning condenser that's there, right?
Lovely though it may be.
Lovely, is it? See how quiet that is, boys? Right? That thing's just a humming, baby. You can't even hear that from inside. My God, that's good.
Is that a J2000? Oh, the J2000 is a good model.
Now, might be slightly different for the Marriage Saver 6000 Toto G400 toilet. We can get into that conversation another time. Spectacular toilet, does save lives and marriages, and whole other conversation. We'll introduce that with some of our clients. That being said, we have this opportunity to recognize that we need to be top of mind during the trigger moment, right? And the only way that we're going to be able to do that in an effective way is to repeatedly be in front of them with something that is going to resemble entertainment, because until such time, they're not going to remember facts and figures about your business. They're not going to care that you've been open for 75 years. The people who open that business are all dead. No one cares, right? So it doesn't show an establishment of trustworthiness and durability that we think it does. What sticks with a person's mind is the bright pink elephant that we're using, the kangaroo that we put in the commercial, the thing that makes them giggle and laugh a little bit so that there's a positive resonance in that chemical memory, that mortar to the bricks, so that there is that chemistry that's anchoring them in to build our brand bigger in their brain.
And I think you have to think of wastage in terms of that longevity, which is, if you're Porsche, you are going to quote unquote waste your marketing for 35 years on a guy, right? When he's 16 and he sees your ad and loves the car. When he's 18, he puts it up in his dorm room, a poster of the car he's going to own one day. In his 20s, in his 30s. You can call that wastage. It's not. It's investment, because when that guy makes senior partner and he gets a little bonus, and it's like, what, I'm finally going to buy that car and treat myself to a fun,
But I think what you're saying
then
is
it's going to come in. And so that was not wastage for 30 years. That was investment for 30 years. That was that longevity, which paid off in the end.
And I think that there's an astoundingly important statement buried in there that we need to tease
I normally
out.
bury my best ideas,
Yeah,
so
your
that
best-
somebody else has got to pick them out.
Right. No, you're absolutely right that we're talking about the word, and the word that you said that's rung true for me was investment. Look, branding, and Benet Fields talks about this constantly. Branding is a compounding effect. It builds in the brain over time, particularly the chemical brain, when we give it the proper repetition and salience, relevance, right? Ultimately, when we build that thing up, that's an investment in your brand. That's what's making you the household name. Table stake stuff goes invisible. Sales offers goes invisible. Lead gen costs, like the cost per clicks, the cost per impressions, the costs that you're investing into media that disappears from the client's radar in 7 seconds, 7 days, or the short term because they don't need your thing. Those are sunk costs. That's where money is lost in marketing. If we can reduce the total volume of that and get that price down as a whole, right, the return on advertising spend as a whole down in the sunk cost category, and bring it up in the compounding costs, right, the compounding investment that you're making in your business. Think of it like a stock. You put $50,000 into stocks year one. You didn't make more than $50,000. You just invested in them. But that $50,000 then earns you $55,000, and that $55,000 earns you $70,000. That $70,000 earns you $100,000, and it goes on and on and on. And that's the power of compounding that we're applying to communication. We can't let the communication die off. If we do, we're going to lose the salience, the long-term, that building that we built up, that McMansion, is going to slowly just start to disappear, crumble down, because there's been nothing to prop it up. Now, that being said, some of those things linger when the advertising is highly impactful.
But the impact is, and the importance of salience, I think, cannot be overstated. You can target with media, and generally when we talk about targeting, we're almost always talking about targeting via media.
Yeah.
But you can also target with message. And the best example of that is when your message is a price or an offer. What you are doing there, certain people will say, well, what you're doing is you're appealing to the people who are ready to buy today, the only ones who matter, right? The people who buy today. Okay, that's great. But realize that when you put a price into a message, what you're telling everybody who is not in the market today, which is the vast majority, do not listen to this message because there's nothing of value for you. A value for you in this message.
This is only of value to people who are buying this week and looking for a good price.
And that's why Porsche doesn't put the price of their ads of their cars in the magazine ads, because it doesn't we're trying to get you to like the car. We're not trying to sell you the car today. The dealer will do that. But it's important to remember that if your message is constantly offers, constantly numbers, constantly prices, yes, technically you're talking to the 0.1% of people who today are ready to buy a car or today ready to buy a furnace.
But to the rest of the people, you are constantly irrelevant.
But what you're doing is, if there were 100,000 people watching this TV program, as soon as you put that thing in, now you've stopped talking to 100,000 people and you're only talking to like 30.
Yeah.
Holy crap. It costs the same amount of money to talk to 100,000 people today and give them something worth remembering than it does to talk to 30. Holy shit, what are you doing talking to 30 people when you had an opportunity to talk to 100,000 people for the same amount of money? Which is why we try and focus on how can we make a message that's relevant to all 100,000, including the 30, so that when everybody else comes to the point where they want to buy the product or service that we offer, we're already there. They're not Googling it, or they're Googling our brand, not the category. That's how you take the same amount of money and have it work harder for you. This is the essence of what Ryan talks about when he says, I can take the amount of money you're spending now and give you 4 times the results without increasing it. It's this. This is what we're talking about.
This is exactly what we're talking about. And it's reshuffling what we already have. We don't need to spend more budget. We need to spend the budget better and get more result from it. We need to pull more from it. Now, we're blessed to do that in a number of different ways because of the size and scale of our organization. But beyond that, targeting is this double-edged sword. It's completely understandable that these business owners want to have control of their budget. And I totally feel for business owners who are trying to do their best damn job to be fiduciarily. What we're looking at is we have so much budget to spend. Where do we spend it the wisest? Is targeting always going to be the solution? Well, maybe geographically, but not specific, hyper-specific to the clients. The better targeting is going to happen in the words that we use to speak to the relational customer that we're looking to attract, the good customer, as it were, right? And to condition those transactional customers that there's more to think about than just the price. There's also the energy, there's also the time that's invested to make sure that they get the best possible solution, not just the cheapest possible solution.
And know that if the basis of your marketing right now is offers and prices, know that you are talking to a minuscule amount of people in your market, and you can be beaten by somebody who talks to everybody for the same amount of money.
Yes. There's always somebody who's got more money, and they're willing to outspend you in a lot of these categories that we work in. So speak a distinctive value. Say something that's going to stand 600 feet above the competition. How do you do that? It's not by doing 100 things better than everyone else. It's about doing 1 or 2, maybe 3 things significantly better than the average, and things that most competition would look at and go, oh, they're bonkers. I'd never do that. That's nuts, right? I can't believe they're doing that. Or they'll try to do it for 3 months and go, oh, that didn't work, right? Because they didn't try it the right way. They didn't have the mix right, you know? So targeting based off of the impact of the message with obnoxious repetition is really one of those key things. And it has to bake into all of those digital present spots, all of those phone present spots, all of those spots where the customer goes looking when they actually need your thing. The two have to strike a balance, but the balances are usually disproportionately the opposite way with most of the clients that we come in and adjust for. And that makes a huge difference to the ultimate result and the ultimate profitable growth that goes along with it. So look, big brands are in it for the long play. Right, that's what I see and hear out of this conversation. Even if they're selling their business in 3 years, it's better to be playing the long play than the short play. And if you want to be a market leader, you really need to do this to become the household name, not just another name that they recognize. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for joining us on Advertising in America. We hope you enjoyed the show and captured a nugget of marketing magic. Want to hear more? Subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends. Do you have questions or topics you want us to cover? Join us on our socials at Advertising in America. Want to spend your marketing budget better? Visit us at wizardofads.services to book your free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today. Until next time, keep your ads enchanting and your audience captivated.